Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for listening to our content, and please like and subscribe. Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I'm Jeff Francoeur, along with, I'll introduce you today first. Brad Williams on this side and Britt Lee on this side.
Appreciate it.
We're so excited to have you with us today. We have a special guest. A guy that I know they enjoyed watching. I've seen clips and hear him, but went to Auburn, was an NCAA championship, three-time Olympic gold medalist, and now, like any great athlete does, goes to TV after. So, Rowdy Gaines, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And it's funny because, how old are you, dude? You're like 39, right?
39, yep.
So I won. What you were born in 1984?
Yes, I was.
That's when I won. That's how old I am.
Exactly.
So for you to say you remember me, there's no way you remember me. You're way too young to remember me.
Once I got to know you better, I felt like I was going to kind of throw that out there, that I was born the year you won your Olympic gold medals. But
your parents knew who I was.
Yeah.
Well, trust me. Yeah,
great.
big fan.
Hey, Rowdy, if it makes you feel any better, Brad and I were in college watching you win in '84. So we're with you.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I was in high school.
Exactly right.
I was in high school.
Brad was in high school. I'm the old guy.
I was in high school.
Oh man. Well, we know.
I need an old guy in here. So
yeah.
Hey, good to be with y'all.
Thanks. Before we get going, I just kind of want to give you the chance that we obviously know you're announcing, but what else are you up to these days to keep yourself busy?
Well, like you, I don't make broadcasting as a career, but I will end up calling my 9th Olympic Games in Paris next summer for NBC. I'm actually flying to College Station when we hang up this afternoon to go to the SEC Championships, to call that for the SEC Network. I'm doing the NCAAs for ESPN in a few weeks. So that keeps me busy. And then I'm also Vice President of Partnerships for a foundation for Learn to Swim across the country called Step Into Swim. So our goal is to raise money to be able to give grants out to swimming lesson providers, learn to swim programs, to be able to teach kids the life-saving gift of swimming lessons. So that's kind of what I'm doing on a daily basis.
So one thing I love to ask all athletes that we've talked to is, not even college, but before that, give us your favorite youth sports memory growing up that you remember.
Oh man, I love that question. You know, my favorite youth sports, you have to remember, I'll be 64 years old tomorrow. And so this takes you back long before soccer. You know, Jeff, we didn't have Little League soccer back then, so I wasn't a soccer player, but I grew up loving youth sports. I went from one sport to the next: Little League football, baseball, basketball, all the grade school stuff. But my biggest and fondest memory was when I was in Little League football. I played center, believe it or not. I'm some skinny little kid playing center in Little League football, but winning the league championship and going out to celebrate at a local pizza joint with all my friends. And it believe it or not, it's like distinct memories as a 10-year-old having done that. I didn't start swimming competitively until I was 17 years old. So I didn't really have an age group's experience as a kid. So you're talking childhood memories. My childhood memories are not of swimming competitively, recreationally, obviously. I grew up in Florida, but competitively, it was specifically that Little League football season that we had when we won the league championship.
That is awesome.
That's great.
And you're a big center, I bet, too, weren't you?
You're an athletic center.
Dude, I'm telling you, man. I was. You think I'm a skinny little runt now? You should have seen me at 10. So, but it was still a lot of fun, and you know, it was one of those soccer things, you know, where everybody, when they kick the football and everybody, I mean, kick the soccer ball and everybody kind of runs around the ball. That
Yep.
was sort of kind of like it was in football, but it was a lot of fun, and I loved sports as a youth. It shaped me to what I am today. But when I got to high school, I just I sucked at everything. I tried out for high school football and baseball and basketball, golf, tennis, and I got cut in all of them.
Oh my goodness.
Luckily in youth sports you don't get cut, but and in high school we did get cut, and then I finally found my true passion in swimming.
So, Rowdy, I mean, we want to dig into that a little bit because that's amazing that you didn't start competitive swimming until 17 years old, and a couple years later, you're winning world records and so on and so forth. So, tell us a little bit about how that came about, and just dig into that a little bit for our audience.
Yeah, it's funny because as I said, water is part of my DNA. I mean, it's part of who I am. I'm a third generation Floridian. My dad was born here, my grandfather, and I grew up around water my whole life. So it was very familiar to me. Um, but it was also something you take for granted. It's like living next to the Statue of Liberty. You never really go because you live right there, right? And so for swimming, it wasn't something I thought about doing competitively. I just loved being in the water. But once I explored the fact that I wasn't very good in anything else, I said, well, let me give swimming a shot. And, I didn't get cut. I made the team. I still stunk. I mean, I'll never forget my very first swim meet. My coach put me in the 500 freestyle. By the way, the football coach was also the swim coach. So he was trying to get rid of me, and he said, I'm going to put you in the 500 free. And if you don't know swimming, that's the longest distance you can swim in high school. And thinking that would get rid of me. Anyway, I made it barely and couldn't do a flip turn, swam with my head out of the water. It was ridiculous. But I didn't get cut. And, it's just, it's a long story, but I just ended up falling in love with the sport, and it became a real passion for me and something that I dedicated myself to once I realized that I had a talent. And like you said, um, I literally broke my very first world record 2.5 years later.
Wow.
So you went from not knowing how to do a flip turn to that level in 2.5 years. Was it nature or nurture through those 2.5 years? Did you just work yourself so hard, or obviously you were gifted and you didn't realize you were gifted?
Well, and this probably sounds real corny to y'all, but my belief is we are all put on this earth for a very specific purpose. Jeff, you were, this, again, corny, but you were granted a gift, man. You were blessed, and my gift, I guess, my tombstone is probably going to read Rowdy Gaines Dash Swimmer, and I'm okay with that because it gave me a lot in my life and shaped my life to what it is today. I mean, I hope it's a lot more than that, and as a good
Sure, it
father
will
and a
be.
good husband, a good son, etc. But I really think I was blessed. I was blessed with a gift, and it took me a while to discover it, obviously. But growing up around water all my life, my parents water skied for an organization called Cypress Gardens,
Oh
which
yeah.
was a big water ski capital
Oh yeah.
of
We
the
went
world,
there.
really, back in the late 50s, early 60s. And they would take the boat over. We lived on the same lake, and they would take the boat over to work every day. So I guess my point in this short question of yours and long answer is the fact that I love the water. I love being in the water more than I love being on land, believe it or not. And I think that's one of the big reasons why I was successful to start with, and also from a longevity standpoint, was the fact that I love the water.
It's interesting that you talk about that because, we kind of asked the question about specializations in sports these days. And it's one thing that I'm very passionate about. I love kids having the opportunity to swim, to play football, to play soccer, and you're kind of a living proof in the fact that you don't have to just swim at 10 years old. You can, swim, play baseball, and do that. So, as you talk to kids, you encourage them at a young age, play a lot of sports and see what you like.
Absolutely. Exactly. That is the epitome of my belief in the fact that I think kids should be well-rounded, and that they should try as many sports or activities or after school, whatever it is, the arts. A couple of my kids, they played soccer. Some of my kids played piano. Some of my kids were in the band. But our rule of thumb is they had to do something. We didn't care what it was. Take chess club. One was in the chess club after school. We didn't really care what it was, but they had to be well rounded, and stick through it through a season. And we just really were adamant about our children being well rounded and not being married, quote unquote, to one specific sport as an 8 and 9 year old. Because I'll tell you, and I don't mean to drone on about this, but I think it's a really important point to make about swimming. There's a in our sport, guys, you can break a national age group record in an age group. For example, you can break a record in 10 and under, 11 and 12, 13 to 14. It goes in different age groups, right? You can be the next best nationally. Well, there's never been a 10 and under national age group record holder ever make the Olympic team. So the point is, it doesn't matter how good you are at 9 or 10. It has no bearing on whether you're going to be a great swimmer in the future, because history proves that the very best at that age never went on to be the best later on in their lives. So it goes to your point, Jeff, about the fact that, yeah, I think it's really important to experience as much as you can as a child and then find that passion.
Yeah, 100%. That brings me to just real quick, and I'll let y'all ask, but, we had Davey Pollock on, and he was talking about, athletes, and you really don't know what you're going to get until after puberty for a lot of these kids. And that makes perfect sense what you're saying. 10 and under, they might have never grown. They might not have the passion, but I love that, man. I think that is very influential.
It is. I agree.
Rowdy, I got to think too that burnout in swimming, miles and miles in the pool for kids who are starting out at a really young age has got to be a big issue. Can you, what do you say to parents and to kids these days about the way they train and at what age and so on and so forth?
It's so funny you ask that, because it goes back to my point again. In fact, I'll do a swim clinic, for example, and I'll have a parent stand in front of me with their 8-year-old and say, "Hey, what age should my child to start doubles?" When I say doubles, that means swimming twice a day. In our sport, when you get to an elite level, you swim in the morning and then you swim in the afternoon or evening. We go doubles, and it just astounds me that this parent is standing next to an 8-year-old thinking about that already. Like, you're going to put your kid in practice at 5:30 in the morning and then put them again in the afternoon. So I tell them that stat. I said, if you want your kid to be successful in our sport, in my sport, I don't know about baseball, I don't know about football or any other sport, but if you want them to be successful in my sport, you better not put the pressure on them to be successful as an 8 or 9 year old, or a 10, 11-year-old for that matter. You need, and again, this is a huge cliche, but really it needs to be all about fun. At that age, I tell them, have them want to go to practice, have them want to be a part of their social, being involved around their kids and doing relays and fun stuff at practice, because it really needs all be about fun and then technique in many ways in swimming at a young age. And then as they grow a little older, then they can start to figure it out. Swimming does have that burnout, and so I say, usually when a girl turns 12 or 13 and a boy turns 13 or 14, because girls mature a little bit younger than boys, at least in swimming, then they can start to make decisions about how much they want to give to the sport.
Can you take in swimming, even at 16 or 17, when you're for kids who are becoming really good swimmers who potentially can swim at college at least? I mean, can you take time off, or is it you got to go 12 months a year?
Again, this is just me talking, guys.
You have a little bit of credibility.
Yeah, but you
Um,
got some experience to talk about this.
I'm just some dumb jock, but my belief is absolutely they should take time off. I have kids come to me all the time and ask for my advice. And my advice is, when you're having those doldrums in the sport, or you're having that feeling of burnout where you're not enjoying it, then that means you need to take some time off. And I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to have an off season, so to speak. We don't have an off season in swimming. Back to your question, it is a year-round sport. When I was training for the Olympics, I would have about a week off in the fall and a week off in the spring. Otherwise, it's year-round. Um, but I think it's okay to take a month off. And usually as an athlete, if you're 16, 17, and you're really getting involved seriously in any sport, you're really not going to take off anyway, right? I mean, you're still going to exercise and do the kinds of things you want to try to do to stay in shape. And that's what I tell swimmers. I go out and play some golf, dude. Go ride a bike. Go walk around the block. Go walk your dog, play ping pong, whatever it is. You're going to stay active anyway. And even if you don't, it's not going to kill you. Our rule of thumb in our sport is every day you take off, it takes about a half of a day to get the feel back of the water. So if you take a month off, it'll take you 2 weeks to get back into it. Big deal.
Yeah. What about, okay, I think about with other sports, but with swimming, say a kid is 13, 14, 15. What is critical weight training wise for a swimmer? Like, what are some of those important things, and what are things that they should maybe stay away from still at a younger age?
Yeah, and my general rule of thumb about that is that I don't think any child should be lifting weights before they're 13 years of age.
Agreed.
They can do their own body weight, so to speak, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and stuff like that. But my advice is never to let a child get into the weight room before they turn 13, because I think it's really a dangerous thing, and it doesn't really help them because, as you said, they haven't really hit puberty yet. So, and even then, it's very much an individual decision from that family and that coach, because kids mature completely differently, and you can have a 13-year-old that is as mature sometimes as a 16-year-old physically, not emotionally, but physically. So, but I've always say, you need to be really cautious in the weight room. I never lifted a weight until I was a freshman in college. And I have no regrets in doing that whatsoever.
Let's talk about college. So you were very highly recruited, right? Lots of schools came after you and wanted you to swim for them, or is that how Auburn got you, or are they the only ones who saw you swim and wanted you?
Well, I wasn't highly recruited, believe it or not, until the end of my senior year in high school because I wasn't any good. I really didn't flourish until I wrote probably 50 colleges, and I wanted that experience to be able to swim in college. So I didn't really have a particular school that I wanted to go to. Maybe Florida because I'm from Florida, but they never wrote me back and never really corresponded with me. So the Auburn coach saw me swim in between my junior and senior year. His name is Eddie Reese, and maybe the greatest coach in swimming history. He's won, I think, 15 national titles at Texas, and just a great coach. And but he recruited me to Auburn, believed in me, and saw something in me, very raw, obviously. And I loved the campus when I went to school there, and fell in love with the team and the coach, obviously, and Eddie. And uh, and again, to tell you the truth, they're the only ones that really recruited me as well. So it was pretty easy at the end to say, I really wanted to go to school there.
I had heard that. I'd heard that they were the only ones, and that's why I said, "Hey, you probably hundreds coming after you." But so, when did you realize that it was that you had potential to swim in the Olympics?
I mean, I started dreaming about it probably in the middle of my senior year in high school. I started because I watched the Olympics. So I started, and back up a second. I started swimming in February of 1976. And the reason why that date is important is because the Summer of Olympics were held in Montreal that summer of 1976. And that men's swim team was the greatest Olympic team in history. Still is the greatest Olympic team. They won 12 out of the 13 events. They won 12 of 13 gold medals. They went 1, 2, and 8 of the 13 events, 1, 2, 3, and 6 events. So it was the greatest team. And so I fell in love watching that team that summer. And so after those Summer Olympics and beginning maybe the middle of my senior year, and when I started excelling a little bit, that's when I said, I would love to go. Now, the dream was created there, but it didn't really become a reality until after my freshman year, that summer when I made the world championship team, my freshman year in college, after I made the world championship team. And as I said, that's when I broke a couple of world records on relays, just relays, not individually, but on relays. And that's when I kind of realized, like, oh, wow, I do have a shot to make the Olympics in 1980, which, as we know now, didn't take place for us.
Yeah, talk about that, Fry. So we all, we all have a coach, I think at some point in our lives that makes an impact that you can never repay and it means everything. I know Richard Quick for you was that man. Can you talk about him for a minute and how impactful he was? Because I know that was tough for you in 80, not being obviously able to go over and swim.
Well, I don't know about you all, but I won 3 gold medals. I gave one to my mom, one to my dad, and one to my coach because I could not have done it without their love and their support. I know that corny as well, but it's very true. And Richard was, I always get emotional just talking about him because he made a huge impact in my life, and we lost him about 10 years ago to cancer, and but it's a guy that molded me into the person I am today, and certainly had a huge impact on my swimming career, but more so than that, than outside the pool, and specifically got me ready to handle the boycott of 1980 emotionally, and then prepared me perfectly for 1984 because in 1980 I was predicted to have won 5 gold medals. Who knows, when you actually got there, but my times that year would have won 5 gold medals. And you got to remember that in our sport, we don't have a World Series. We're, if the Braves miss a World Series one year, they can always hope to be able to get back the next year. It's every 4 years for us. That's our World Series. And so that journey turned into an 8-year journey, and a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. But thankfully, because of Richard, I was able to kind of hang on. And in 1984, I was not the best swimmer. In fact, that race of the 100 freestyle, I probably should have probably been fifth or sixth. To tell you, we could have swam that race 10 times, and I would have lost 9 times. But for that one magical moment, I was the best.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I mean, I know that's tough.
Rowdy, you just talked a little bit about 84 and making the Olympics, and you probably weren't the best swimmer. I have a good friend, Dave Wilson, who was on the 84 swim team with you. And Dave tells me that the most pressure packed race he ever swam was not the Olympics, it was the Olympic trials. So, I want to talk a little bit about mental health and mental preparation. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit about that experience, and then just how do you handle the pressure of being on the biggest stages?
Well, that's a great question. I will tell you that the Olympic trials is much more pressure packed than the Olympic Games. And the reason why Dave says that, and it's true, is the fact that it's so difficult to make the team in our country. Uh, the United States has been number one in the world of swimming since 1956. Think about that for a second. 67 straight years, U.S. has been number one. What other sport, what other team? Can you imagine the Braves winning the World Series 67 years in a row, or we be or the United States being number one in soccer for 67 years? I mean, it's unheard of. So the third place finisher in my trials in 1984 would have won the bronze medal at the Olympics. That's how good our country is in the sport of swimming. I'll give you another quick example. At the trials in 2021, in a 1 year delay because of the COVID, we had a women backstroker. They only take 2 swimmers, right? The woman that finished sixth in our 100 backstroke at the Olympic trials would have won the bronze medal at the Olympics. Again, it gives you a glimpse of the depth that we have in this country. So Dave is absolutely right. The trials is unlike anything that an athlete will experience in our sport. And Jeff, I would imagine getting to the World Series is something that's magical and certainly a lot of pressure. But boy, that that final playoff, that National League playoff right beforehand is almost more pressure. Hey, when you look at when I watched football this last few weeks and saw the AFC and NFC, I thought, that the pressure of just getting there is so difficult. It's almost a relief in many ways. And that's what it is for an athlete going to trials. It's a relief in so many different aspects and just making an Olympic team. Because once you're an Olympian, dudes, man, you're an Olympian forever and ever. There's no such thing as being a past Olympian or former Olympian. It's forever.
Yeah, so to piggyback on that with the mental health part, because I agree with like with baseball, for instance, you get in the World Series, you're excited, but you lose game one, it's one game. You're done. And I've always said this watching Olympics every year. It's like you get a couple shots at this thing, and that's it. You fall down
Yep.
doing a routine in gymnastics, you got to wait 4 more years. And it's how do you deal with? I mean, we saw Simone Biles last year or whatever. What was that? 2 years ago, whenever that was. My mind's all clustered now. I got 4 kids under 9, but we saw what she went through. How do you deal with that, and what do you tell kids about that?
It's a great question, and there's really no right answer, or I'd be a rich man right now, to tell you the truth. I will say that for me personally, and this took some maturity. That's why I think you're right in the emotional part, and your emotional health goes through such a roller coaster ride when you get to that level at the Olympic trials, for example, for a 17, 18-year-old, sometimes 14 and 15-year-old. um, because you do in many aspects only have that one opportunity, uh, and and I just tell them that you'll learn this, that it's really about the journey, um, because now I look back on my life, and it wasn't winning the gold medal, and it really wasn't becoming an Olympian. It was the journey to become an Olympian. Those are the lessons that I learned that have helped me in my life. The valleys, the peaks are the easy part, but the athletes that I have met, again, in my sport primarily, that live through the valleys are the ones that usually are the ones that have the most success when it comes to peaks, and you learn from the valleys. And I just tell them that the journey is going to teach you a lot more about your life than the actual results of that journey. I know that sounds, again, a
Oh,
little
I
bit
love that.
cliche-ish, but that's what I learned from myself anyway. And it took me a while. It wasn't, in 1980, I didn't know those lessons. I didn't understand it. At 21, so I can imagine at 17 or 18, you wouldn't know those lessons. But I just tried in time. Time is a big healer in many ways, and in time you do learn that.
Rowdy, you've been watching swimming for a long time. What do you think are the key indicators, or why are young athletes right now struggling so much with mental health, as opposed to maybe they did, maybe you saw it in the past, but it just seems like it's much more prevalent nowadays than it once was. What are you thinking that the cause of that is?
For all of us, even you, Jeff. I mean, you're 39, but even 10 years ago, we didn't have the tools that are out there for us, and I say us, for our athletes, that we didn't have 10, 15 years ago, certainly not 40 years ago. And I think some athletes that have come out that are high profile, that have dealt with that and have been upfront about it, have really helped. Michael Phelps, I just was with Michael last week at an event that we did together, and I hosted a roundtable with myself and him, and we talked literally about mental health. And one of the things, that I'm proud about the fact that he did was he came out and said, "I'm struggling. I'm having a hard time, and it's not physical, it's mental. I got a DUI. I was suicidal." He was very upfront about these kinds of things, and I think that those athletes that have come out, those high profile athletes, and have talked about their journey that I just mentioned, I think it's really helped our young athletes. Simone Biles in gymnastics last year. I think that will help a lot of young gymnasts to be able to not only take care of their physical health, which is a priority, but more importantly, their mental health.
Rowdy, you talked a minute ago about you gave a gold medal to your mom, one to your dad, and one to your coach. A big part of our audience are sports parents who are looking for advice and as they try to navigate this journey with their kids. Can you talk about the role your parents played? And you've been a dad as well. I don't know if your daughters were into sports, but what would you say to parents today about, about what you've seen and what you've experienced both as the kid and as a parent?
Well, yeah, as a father, yeah, I have 4 daughters and 5 granddaughters, so you guys can feel sorry for me. It's
Jeez,
okay.
man,
Um,
you couldn't get one in there anywhere.
You'll be well taken care of
no
in old
boys,
age.
zero. Um, I do have boyfriends and husbands and stuff like that, but and I used to have a male dog, but no, all girls in my life. Um, no, I think my parents were certainly not those helicopter parents that they call them. I guess that's a word for parents nowadays. They really were. It's like we were just talking about this with my granddaughter, and it kind of reminded me of my parents in a way. Uh, my one of my granddaughters had a bunny rabbit that just died after having the bunny for like 7 or 8 years, and she was really distraught. And we were talking about the unconditional love that an animal has for their owner, right? It's unconditional. And I'm not comparing my parents to animals, obviously, but I think that unconditional love was a big part of my success. Uh, they loved me no matter the results. The results really didn't matter. My mom and dad both didn't know much about swimming. They didn't know anything about times or anything like that. They never came to all my meets. They came to a lot of my meets. They went to the Olympics, but not all of them. And I think that kind of attitude from them and the fact that win, lose, or draw, they were going to be behind me was a big factor in my success. That they didn't hover. Uh, my mom hovered in other ways, but certainly not in swimming. She definitely hovered in other ways, but both of them offered me a lot of guidance and love, and um, they were always good at nudging, but not shoving.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think those are the best kind, and hopefully that's true for others.
That's awesome. You talk about them coming to the Olympics. We had Misty May Trainer on a couple months ago. I played baseball with her husband, Matt, back a long time ago. But, you know, we asked her this question. I want to ask you the same thing. What was it like standing up on that podium? What goes through your head when you're hearing that national anthem? Just all the thoughts of everything that you've done, or did you just enjoy the moment?
It's really hard to put in words. I wish you could have been a fly on the inside wall of my body during that moment, because you know how you're happy sometimes, but having joy is a little bit different. It was pure joy. Uh, and it was a feeling that made me feel so warm, and made me feel so proud to be an American because my Olympics, Jeff, was in Los Angeles.
Yep.
So it's like winning that World Series at home. You win that Game 7 at home. My Game 7 was in my home country, and I had never swum in front of more than 20 people, dude. And there were 25,000
Yeah.
in the stands in LA, and they were all pulling for us. And again, it just was something that it culminated in pure joy when I touched the wall. In fact, when I first touched, if you watched the race, when I first touched, I didn't turn around right away
Yeah.
because I heard the crowd erupt, right? The crowd was going crazy. So I thought, well, I have a 50-50 chance of winning. They never erupted for another person, another country like that, just for an
Yeah.
American
Yeah.
one. Well, there was one other American in the race. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, before I turn around, I know I have a 50-50 chance now, right? Because it's either me or him that won. And so I kind of slowly turned around and enjoyed the cheering, pretending like it was for me, just in case I didn't win. And of course, when I won, it was an amazing feeling. And then to hear your national anthem like I said, is something that I'll never be able to explain in words.
Are you? I know that the 28 Olympics is going to be back in LA. I think is that right? Or is
Yes,
that going to be a special thing for you to be back there at an Olympic Games?
it sure will be. I can't wait. Like I said, I'm calling the games next summer in Paris, and I've signed to do Los Angeles and Los Angeles as well, and that will be my last Olympics. But it'll be cool to be able to kind of go full circle, to start in LA in '84 and then end it 44 years later in the same city that gave me so much joy and so much happiness and so much love. It's a great city, and they'll do an amazing job in putting on a wonderful Olympics, I'm sure of.
Rowdy, you've been the face of swimming for many Americans, and you've been able to see just and experience just so many great swimmers. Who are some of your favorites? And then we all know the Michael Phelps and the Katie Ledeckis, but is there some swimmers that we wouldn't know as well that have kind of like touched your heart?
Well, there have been a lot of different races that I've called. I called every single one of Michael Phelps's races. I called every single one of Katie's races. And certainly, as you said, some of those really stick out in my mind because, I'm very good friends with both of them. But I think when you look back, I mean, I remember races that you guys will never remember, and even the general public, the pure swimming audience will remember, a Jeff Rouse who missed winning the gold medal in '92 and then came back and won it in '96, or Misty Hyman who went down to Sydney in 2000, was totally not favored. That there was a woman named Susie O'Neill from Australia, which is their national pastime swimming is. Huge favorite, Madam Butterfly they called her, and she pulled the upset and won that. That sticks out in my memory. The relay in 2008 when Jason Lezak anchored, and Jason really a journeyman sprinter ended up really swimming the greatest race in Olympic history. Those are the kinds of memories I have of really people that, everybody knows the Michael Phelpses and Katie Ledeckis of the world. But some of those races mean a lot to me. And the most recent one that you might have heard of was Caleb Dressel winning the 100-meter freestyle in Tokyo the summer before last, because that's the event that I won. And a list of 100 freestyle Olympic champions in our country. It's basically a who's who of our sport. Johnny Weissmiller, who played Tarzan, Buster Crabbe, Mark Spitz, Don Cholander, Nathan Adrian, and now Caleb Russell. It's a pretty exclusive club, and that one kind of touched my heart too.
Hey, I just on a side note want to say I don't know what the stats are, but I got to think swimming is probably the most popular viewed sport in Summer Olympics, and I just want to say that's in large part because of you. You make it so fun.
You do.
All seriousness, you just do an amazing job, and your enthusiasm that comes forth, and your love for the sport, and your love for the kids who are doing it. Just thanks for bringing that to all of us with so much passion.
Well, that means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. That's very very kind, and I usually are telling people turn the sound down. So for you
Yeah.
to say that, and I really sincerely mean that. That means a lot to me. Can you cut this little section out right there, what you just said, and send it to NBC? And let
I will
Definitely.
do.
Yeah. I always laugh because in 1996, when it was in Atlanta, I was 12 years old. And my dad, I have an older brother, older sister, and my dad took each one of us to one event. So my sister chose swimming, my brother chose baseball, and I chose table tennis. I went and saw ping pong. And I think we saw like Japan and South Korea hammered out in the semifinals. But you've given us a lot of
That's
great
funny.
memories. And finishing up here, we got a couple final questions for you, Rowdy. Talk to young swimmers in our group right now and tell what is your biggest couple pieces of advice for young swimmers as they're preparing for the journey, whether that's high school, college, or Olympics. What is a few things they all can do along the way?
Well, I think the first piece of advice I would give, and again, I'm not sure I'm the right person to give advice because I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, is never feel like you have to do it alone. Uh, there's a lot of times I think when children end up feeling that experience of anxiety and pain in their lives, they feel like they're an island, right? They feel like they have to do it all by themselves and they can't rely on others for help and support. And it really should be just the opposite, that you should be able to rely on those that love you and care for you. And that's your family and that's your parents. And if it's not your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles. We don't all have that kind of relationship with our parents like I did. And I understand that. But there are people that surround you that you're not aware of that really care for you. And you need to rely on that. You can't put the whole weight of the world just on your shoulders. And I think that's really important when you deal with life. Forget about sports, but it certainly holds true with athletics. And the other piece of advice I always say is soak in the journey. And that's I touched upon that earlier, but you really need to love the experience of what you're going through, because my memories, guys, you asked me this the very first question. My memories, yeah, we won the league title in Little League football, but my memories really aren't of that specific moment. It was really during the entire season of all those times we went to Pizza Hut to get pizza after
Yeah.
the games, right? It wasn't just that one moment. And my memories are of the relationships I made during that time, and the friendships I made. My friends in high school swimming, almost 50 years later, are still my friends.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that, right? And kids don't understand that. They don't understand that some of the relationships and friendships they're making in the sport will be there forever and ever. And that's something that's a lot more important than gold medals and blue ribbons and MVP trophies, in my opinion.
That's awesome. And you kind of lead me into my last question, which is, one of our main goals here is to give kids and parents, some experiences from just great athletes that have done this and how they've done it. One of our main goals is we want kids and their parents to have great relationships when this is all done. We talk about that. What is your one piece of advice for parents of these young swimmers as they journey through?
Jeff, I would say and again, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but be that parent that offers that unconditional love. Be that parent that is going to be with that child in a positive manner, win or lose. And there's going to be a lot of losses in that child's life. And you have to look back on your life and think about the losses you had and say, you know what? I don't want you to experience those alone. I'm going to be here for you during those valleys. Just as much I'm going to be here for you during those peaks, because if I think that happens, uh, I think the child will end up appreciating it, and you'll have a better bond with that child throughout your life, not just as an 8 or 9 year old, but also as an 18 or 19 year old and a 48 or 49 year old. That bond will be stronger all the way through.
No, we just want to tell you, man, thank you for joining us today. Happy birthday, of course.
Thank
But
you.
you got an amazing story. We're all big fans, and again, we can't thank you enough.
I love what you do, and I've already watched a couple of these podcasts beforehand, and you guys do a great job. I love what you do. Keep up the great work, and if there's anything I can do for you guys down the line, let me know.
Well, Rowdy, have fun, man. I know you got a flight to catch, but we appreciate
I do.
everything.
Thank you so much, Rowdy.
Thanks so much.
Anytime, guys.
This was great. Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thanks, bud. Hey, guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for checking out Pure Athlete, and subscribe to our channel on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you go to listen to our podcast.